Sega, The Console Wars and Beyond, A Journey Through Gaming History. 1. From service games to Sega's dawn, the origins of an empire. For millions around the globe, the name Sega conjures images of a blue blur racing across vibrant landscapes, or perhaps the thrilling bass notes and flashing lights of a cutting-edge arcade cabinet. It's a name synonymous with speed, innovation, and a fierce, irreverent attitude that defined a generation. Yet, to understand the true spirit of Sega, one must look beyond the gleaming plastic of its consoles and the pixelated worlds of its games. The story begins not in a Silicon Valley garage, nor in a bustling Tokyo electronics lab, but in the post-war ruins of Japan, amidst the gritty entrepreneurial spirit of American servicemen and a visionary named David Rosen. In 1951, a young U.S. Air Force veteran named David Rosen arrived in Japan. His initial venture wasn't directly about entertainment, it was about filling a niche. He started Rosen Enterprises, a company that imported and distributed photo booth machines across the country. Japan was rebuilding, and the presence of thousands of American troops created a unique market for leisure and entertainment. Rosen, with his keen business acumen, quickly recognized the demand for coin-operated amusement devices. He branched out, importing pinball machines and eventually acquiring the rights to distribute slot machines. Around the same time, another American venture was gaining traction. Service Games, an entirely different entity, was founded by 3 other American entrepreneurs: Martin Bromley, Richard Stewart, and Irving Bromberg. Their focus was similar to Rosen's in scope, but different in application. They imported surplus American arcade games, specifically slot machines and jukeboxes, directly for U.S. military bases in Japan. The name, Service Games, itself was a straightforward nod to their primary clientele. By the early 1960s, both Rosen Enterprises and Service Games were significant players in Japan's burgeoning coin-operated entertainment industry. Rosen had expanded his operations to include manufacturing some of his own machines, beginning Sega's long and deep tradition of creating hardware. It became clear that a merger could consolidate their strengths and eliminate competition. In 1965, this momentous union occurred. Rosen Enterprises and Service Games combined to form Sega Enterprises. The widely accepted origin of the name, Sega, is a simple portmanteau. Service Games. What started as a functional name for a military-focused supplier would soon become a global icon. Under Rosen's leadership, the newly formed Sega Enterprises began to shift its focus from mere import and distribution to design and manufacturing. While they continued to operate a successful business on military bases, the ambition was to enter the general market with their own original products. Their early machines were predominantly electromechanical, intricate contraptions that used motors, gears, and lights to simulate sports or other activities. Then, in 1966, Sega launched a game that would not only define its early success, but also set the stage for its global aspirations: Periscope. This pioneering arcade game simulated the experience of a submarine battle. Players peered into a scope, aiming torpedoes at ships sailing across a backlit screen. It was ingeniously designed, featuring flashing lights, exciting sound effects, including a dramatic boom when a target was hit, and a compelling interactive element that was relatively advanced for its time. Periscope wasn't just a hit in Japan, it became a worldwide sensation. Notably, it was the first arcade game from a Japanese manufacturer to be exported to the United States and Europe, truly establishing Sega as an international player. The sight of long queues forming around Periscope machines in arcades across the globe proved to Sega that there was a massive, untapped market for innovative, engaging entertainment. This early triumph brought Sega to the attention of major American conglomerates. In 1969, the multinational Gulf plus Western Industries, a powerful, diversified company with interests ranging from film, Paramount Pictures, to financial services, acquired Sega Enterprises. This acquisition provided Sega with significant capital and resources, allowing for further expansion and technological development. David Rosen remained at the helm of Sega within Gulf plus Western, continuing to steer the company with his visionary leadership. The foundation was now firmly set. From an unassuming coin-op distributor operating on military bases, Sega had transformed into an internationally recognized manufacturer of entertainment. As the world moved into the 1970s and the technological landscape shifted, Sega stood ready to ride the coming wave, poised for its next great evolution. The dawn of the electronic video game. The seeds of innovation, risk-taking, and global ambition planted in these early years would soon blossom into the formidable force that would shake the very foundations of the burgeoning video game industry. 2. Arcade alchemy. Sega's golden age of coin-ops. The success of Periscope in the late 1960s was a powerful signal to Sega. The appetite for interactive, coin-operated entertainment was insatiable. As the 1970s dawned, a new technological revolution brewed, one that would transform the mechanical and electromechanical curiosities of the past into the vibrant, dynamic experiences we recognize today. This was the advent of the video game, and Sega was quick to embrace it, ushering in what many consider its golden age of arcade dominance. While Atari's Pong captured global attention in 1972, Sega was already experimenting with its own electronic game designs. Their earliest video games, such as Pongtron, 1973, and Hockey TV, 1973, were direct responses to the burgeoning popularity of the simple bat and ball formula. These early endeavors were crucial learning experiences, allowing Sega's engineers to understand the intricacies of video game hardware and software design. The late 1970s saw the eruption of the arcade phenomenon. Space Invaders, 1978, and Pac-Man, 1980, had turned arcades into cultural epicenters, drawing crowds and generating unprecedented revenues. Sega, now backed by Gulf plus Western's resources, was not merely a participant but a leader in this burgeoning industry. They weren't just creating games, they were crafting experiences, often pushing the boundaries of what arcade technology could achieve. Sega's reputation for cutting-edge innovation became evident through a series of groundbreaking titles. In 1981, they published Frogger, a charming and addictive game that challenged players to navigate a frog across busy roads and perilous rivers. But it was their original creations that truly showcased their technical prowess. That same year saw the release of Turbo, an exhilarating racing game that, despite its relatively simple graphics, utilized early 3D scaling techniques to create an impressive sensation of speed and depth. This was followed by Zaxxon in 1982, a revolutionary shoot-'em-up that pioneered isometric projection, giving players a pseudo-3D perspective that felt truly immersive and futuristic at the time. Yet, it was in the mid-1980s that Sega truly stamped its authority on the arcade world, largely thanks to the prodigious talent of one man, Yu Suzuki. As the head of Sega's AM2, Amusement Machine Research and Development 2, division, Suzuki and his team redefined the limits of arcade technology and game design. His philosophy was simple yet profound: create experiences that transport players beyond the game itself. Suzuki's vision came to life with games that engaged not just the eyes and thumbs, but the entire body. In 1985, Hang On burst onto the scene, a motorcycle racing game housed in an actual replica motorcycle cabinet. Players leaned into corners, feeling the bike respond to their movements, creating an unparalleled sense of immersion. This was not just a game, it was a physical experience. This pioneering use of hydraulic motion simulation cabinets became a Sega hallmark. 1 year later, Suzuki followed up with Outrun, 1986. While retaining the motion cabinet, Outrun captivated players with its vibrant, sun-drenched European landscapes, a stellar soundtrack that allowed players to choose their music before a race, and branching paths that offered replayability. It perfectly encapsulated Sega's arcade swagger: fast, stylish, and endlessly appealing. Simultaneously, Sega's engineers were pushing the boundaries of visual technology. The superscalar graphics engine, developed in-house, allowed for incredibly fast and fluid sprite scaling and rotation, creating a sensation of movement into and out of the screen that was previously impossible. This technology powered hits like Space Harrier, 1985, an on-rails shooter that plunged players into a fantastical world populated by bizarre creatures and surreal landscapes, flying directly into the screen at breakneck speeds. The experience was overwhelming, exhilarating, and completely unique. Afterburner 1987 further refined this technology, placing players in the cockpit of a fighter jet, dodging missiles and engaging in dogfights with breathtaking speed and spectacle, often within a sophisticated hydraulic cockpit cabinet that tilted and turned with the on-screen action. Imagine the arcade floor, alive with the sound of whirring hydraulics and the cheers of onlookers, as players literally leaned into the turns of hang-on or took simulated flight in Afterburner. It was a sensory overload that cemented Sega's reputation as the undisputed king of cutting-edge arcade entertainment. Sega's prowess wasn't just in designing innovative games. It was in developing the powerful underlying hardware to run them. The company rolled out a series of advanced arcade boards, such as System 16, System 18, System 24, and later the Model 1 and Model 2 boards, each more capable than the last, allowing for increasingly complex graphics, faster processing, and more sophisticated gameplay. By the late 1980s, Sega had established itself as a technological powerhouse in the arcade industry. Their games were known for their immersive quality, stunning graphics, and thrilling gameplay. However, a significant shift was already underway. The home console market, though still dominated by Nintendo, was growing at an exponential rate. Sega's experience in crafting compelling arcade experiences would prove invaluable as it prepared to bring that same magic into the living rooms of millions. The transition from coin-op to console would not be without its challenges, but Sega's arcade golden age had forged a company ready to compete on a grander stage. 3. Mastering the home. Sega's first forays into console gaming. Having conquered the arcades with groundbreaking technology and immersive experiences, Sega eyed a new, burgeoning frontier: the home. The idea was simple, yet revolutionary. Bring the exhilarating arcade experience that drew crowds and devoured quarters directly into people's living rooms. This ambition, however, would prove far more complex than designing another powerful arcade board. The home console market was a different beast altogether, filled with its own unique challenges, not least of which was the burgeoning dominance of a certain plucky plumber. Sega's very first attempt to enter the home console market came quietly in 1983 with the launch of the SG-1000. Its release coincided with Nintendo's Famicom, later known as the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, in the West, a console that would reshape the industry. The SG-1000, designed by a team led by Hideki Sato, was a modest machine, packing hardware comparable to early 8-bit computers. It primarily offered ports of Sega's existing arcade games, along with some original titles. While it had a respectable showing for a first attempt, particularly in Japan and parts of Asia, it was thoroughly overshadowed by the Famicom's innovative design, powerful marketing, and strong lineup of first-party games. Even before it truly took off, the SG-1000 was already battling an uphill fight against a formidable rival. The timing of Sega's entry into the North American market was also profoundly affected by a seismic event: the 1983 video game crash. Years of oversaturation, low-quality games, and poor market understanding had led to a catastrophic decline in video game sales, forcing many companies out of business. This devastated consumer confidence and made retailers extremely wary of stocking any new video game products. It was a stark introduction to the volatility of the home entertainment market. Despite these initial headwinds, Sega was resolute. They learned from the SG-1000, recognizing the need for more powerful hardware and, crucially, a stronger distribution and marketing strategy. Their next major push came in 1985 with the Sega Mark III in Japan, later redesigned and launched as the Master System in North America and Europe in 1986. The Master System was a significantly more advanced machine than the SG-1000. It boasted better graphics and sound capabilities than its competitor, the Famicom/NES, in some technical aspects. Sega also offered peripherals like a 3D glasses system, further showcasing their penchant for innovation. The game library steadily grew, featuring colorful titles like Alex Kidd in Miracle World, which eventually became the pack-in title in many markets, an early attempt at a Sega mascot, and an impressive port of Sega's own arcade hit Outrun. However, the Master System continued to face an uphill battle. Nintendo had effectively monopolized the North American market post-crash, establishing near-exclusive agreements with retailers that made it difficult for Sega to even get its consoles and games on store shelves. Nintendo's marketing machine, combined with an ever-growing library of iconic first-party games like Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda, created a formidable barrier to entry. While the Master System found more success in Europe and Brazil, where Nintendo had less of a foothold, it remained a distant second to the NES in the critical North American market. Perhaps the most significant development during this period, one that would redefine Sega's future, was not a console launch but a leadership change. In 1984, Gulf Plus Western, facing financial difficulties, decided to divest its non-core assets. David Rosen, along with Japanese businessman Hayao Nakayama, orchestrated a management buyout of Sega's Japanese assets. This act was transformative. Sega Enterprises became a Japanese-owned company once again, with Nakayama at its helm. This move was pivotal, as it meant Sega would now operate with the agility and financial independence to chart its own aggressive course in the gaming world. Nakayama, with his fierce competitive spirit, quickly understood the scale of the challenge posed by Nintendo's dominance. Sega learned crucial lessons from its early console forays. They recognized that raw technical power wasn't enough. They needed compelling, exclusive first-party titles, a strong mascot, and most importantly, a marketing strategy aggressive enough to challenge Nintendo's seemingly impenetrable fortress. The struggle to break through with the Master System, especially in North America, ignited a fierce, competitive fire within Sega. It forged a resolve to be more than just a follower, preparing the company for a bold, revolutionary move that would fundamentally alter the landscape of home gaming and launch it into a head-to-head confrontation that would capture the imagination of millions. The console wars were about to begin, for the genesis of a rivalry, Sega's 16-bit revolution. The experiences of the Master System era, marked by its struggle to compete against Nintendo's iron grip on the home console market, forged a new resolve within Sega. Under the leadership of Hayao Nakayama, Sega was determined to avoid the mistakes of the past. The next generation of consoles would be their opportunity for redemption, and they planned to seize it with an audacious vision, bringing true arcade power directly into the home. This vision materialized in the form of the Mega Drive, known as the Genesis in North America, a 16-bit console designed to leave 8-bit systems in the dust. Launched in Japan in October 1988, the Mega Drive was an impressive piece of hardware. Boasting a powerful Motorola 68,000 CPU, the same chip found in Macintosh computers, the Amiga, and even many arcade machines of the era, it was significantly more advanced than the NES. Its raw processing power and superior graphics capabilities were designed to translate the vibrancy and speed of Sega's arcade hits directly onto the television screen. Initial reception in Japan, however, was somewhat muted. Nintendo's Famicom was still incredibly popular, and another competitor, NEC's PC Engine, TurboGrafx 16 in the US, had also launched around the same time and quickly gained traction. The real opportunity for the Mega Drive, Sega realized, lay in North America. The NES still ruled, but its 8-bit technology was beginning to show its age. Sega of America was tasked with launching the console in the United States, christened the Genesis to convey a sense of new beginnings. It arrived on shelves in August 1989, priced at $190.99, bundling the arcade hit Altered Beast. The initial launch year was challenging. Marketing the Genesis was difficult, as Nintendo's brand recognition was unparalleled. Retailers were still wary of new video game hardware after the 1983 crash, and Nintendo's powerful licensing agreements meant shelf space for Sega was scarce. There was no instant blockbuster hit, no breakthrough moment that signaled a clear victory. The turning point came in 1990 with the arrival of Tom Kalinske as the president and CEO of Sega of America. Kalinske was an industry outsider, coming from Mattel, where he had successfully revived the Barbie line. He was initially hesitant to take the job, viewing Sega as a niche player, but after a meeting with Nakayama, where he boldly laid out a 4-point plan, he was convinced. Kalinsk's plan was revolutionary for the time: cut the price of the Genesis, bundle a highly desirable game instead of Altered Beast, launch an aggressive marketing campaign directly targeting Nintendo, increase localization and development for the Western market. Nakayama, despite his conservative nature, agreed to Kalinsk's radical proposals. The price of the Genesis was dropped. For the bundled game, Kalinsk pushed for a new, exciting mascot that could directly challenge Nintendo's iconic Mario. This led to the creation of Sonic the Hedgehog, a character that embodied speed, attitude, and a rebellious spirit that perfectly complemented Sega's burgeoning brand identity. Bundling Sonic the Hedgehog with every Genesis console would prove to be one of the smartest decisions in gaming history. The marketing campaign was legendary. Sega launched an all-out assault on Nintendo, coining the infamous tagline, "Genesis does what Nintendo don't." Their ads were direct, bold, and often irreverent. They highlighted the Genesis's superior processing speed and blast processing, directly comparing its capabilities to the SNES. Sega positioned itself as the cool, edgy alternative, appealing to an older, more rebellious demographic that felt Nintendo was too kiddie. This was a significant strategic shift, moving beyond mere technical specifications to defining a distinct brand identity. The result was explosive. With Sonic as its lightning-fast mascot and the aggressive next-level marketing, the Genesis began to fly off shelves. Sega's market share in North America surged, soon reaching, and then surpassing, Nintendo's. For a brief but glorious period in the early 1990s, Sega was the undisputed leader in the North American console market. Nintendo, initially dismissive, was forced to respond. In 1990 in Japan and 1991 in North America, they launched their own 16-bit console, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, SNES. This marked the official beginning of the console wars, a fierce, no-holds-barred competition for market dominance, defined by cutting-edge technology, mascots battling for pop culture supremacy, and increasingly aggressive marketing tactics. The rivalry played out in every facet of the industry, from magazine ads debating which system had the superior port of Street Fighter II to playground arguments over blast processing versus Mode 7. Sega's brief but significant period of leadership fueled its ambition and solidified its place as a true contender. The Genesis had not only provided a platform for iconic games like Phantasy Star IV, Streets of Rage, and Mortal Kombat. It had fundamentally altered the competitive landscape of the video game industry. The 16-bit era was a golden age for gamers, driven by the intense innovation and fierce competition spurred by Sega's audacious challenge to Nintendo's long-held throne. The world was now truly ready for the next level. 5. Sonic's speed and the cool factor, marketing wars and pop culture dominance. If the Genesis provided the hardware firepower, it was the marketing, spearheaded by Tom Kalinsk and embodied by a certain blue hedgehog, that truly won the console wars in North America. Sega understood that beating Nintendo wasn't just about technical superiority. It was about defining a new identity, one that resonated with a generation eager for something fresh, fast, and distinctly cool. Nintendo had Mario, a lovable, portly plumber who represented wholesome family fun. Sega needed a counterpoint, a mascot that reflected the raw energy and rebellious spirit they wanted their brand to project. The task fell to a brilliant team within Sega's new AM8 division, later known as Sonic Team. Programmer Yuji Naka, character designer Naoto Oshima, and level designer Hirokazu Yasuhara. After numerous concept ideas, often involving animals, they landed on a speedy hedgehog. The name Sonic the Hedgehog, quick, spiky, and brimming with attitude, perfectly encapsulated their vision. Launched in 1991, Sonic the Hedgehog was more than just a game. It was a mission statement. Its gameplay emphasized speed over careful platforming. Its protagonist was a cocky, anthropomorphic hero with a scowl, and its levels were designed for exhilarating momentum. When Sega bundled Sonic with the Genesis console, it was a masterstroke. Consumers weren't just buying a machine, they were buying into a feeling, the feeling of raw power, uncompromising speed, and stylish rebellion. Sega's advertising campaigns during this era became legendary for their audacity and directness. While Nintendo's campaigns often focused on product features and family-friendly experiences, Sega's were aggressive, sometimes even confrontational. The iconic slogan, "Genesis does what Nintendo don't," wasn't just a tagline, it was an open declaration of war. Commercials often juxtaposed Genesis games' faster action and superior graphics with snappier, edgier music. They openly mocked Nintendo's perceived slowness and childlike image, telling consumers, "Welcome to the next level." This bold, unapologetic approach appealed directly to teenagers and young adults who wanted something that felt more mature, more serious, and less like a toy. It tapped into a cultural zeitgeist that prized rebellion and individuality. The campaign effectively marketed blast processing, a Sega-coined term that emphasized the Genesis's superior speed and processing power, even if it was largely a marketing buzzword for a hardware advantage. It cemented the idea that Genesis was simply faster and more powerful, a sentiment that fueled playground arguments and magazine editorials for years. Sonic's influence quickly transcended the gaming world. He became a genuine pop culture icon, spawning animated TV series, comic books, and an extensive line of merchandise. He was Sega's answer to Mario, but with a distinct, cooler persona that resonated with a different demographic. Sega had successfully crafted an identity that was synonymous with being hip, edgy, and a step ahead of the competition. However, the pursuit of an edgy image wasn't without its challenges. The console wars intensified further with the release of games like Mortal Kombat in 1993. This fighting game, known for its realistic digitized sprites and graphic fatalities, ignited a massive controversy. Sega, aiming to cater to its older demographic, released the Genesis version with all the blood and gore intact, though it required a specific cheat code to unlock, while the SNES version featured sanitized sweat instead of blood, due to Nintendo's strict content policies. This disparity sparked a public outcry, leading to congressional hearings on video game violence. While Sega initially stood its ground, the controversy ultimately led to a pivotal moment in gaming history: the creation of the Entertainment Software Rating Board, ESRB, in 1994, which would establish a standardized rating system for video games. Sega played a constructive role in the ESRB's formation, recognizing the need for industry-wide self-regulation to avoid government intervention. This event, born from a controversial game, ultimately brought a degree of maturity and accountability to the burgeoning industry. By the mid-1990s, Sega's success with the Genesis and Sonic was undeniable. They had achieved market leadership in North America, something few believed possible. Their aggressive marketing, combined with strong first-party titles, excellent arcade-to-home conversions, and compelling third-party support, created a powerful ecosystem. But while attitude had served them well in the 16-bit console wars, a new generation of games and hardware was on the horizon. The very cool factor that propelled Sega to stardom would soon undergo its greatest test, as the company embarked on a series of rapid, often confusing, technological upgrades that would complicate its path forward. 6. Innovation and fragmentation. The Sega CD, 32X, and the road to Saturn. The remarkable success of the Genesis, fueled by Sonic and aggressive marketing, positioned Sega at the pinnacle of the console market in the early 1990s. Yet this peak was also when fundamental strategic differences began to emerge, especially between the more conservative Sega of Japan, SOJ, led by Hayao Nakayama, and the fiercely innovative Sega of America, SOA, under Tom Kalinske. These differences, coupled with an almost compulsive drive for rapid technological progression, led Sega down a path of fragmentation that ultimately diluted their brand and confused their loyal customer base. The promise of CD-ROM technology was alluring. CDs offered vastly greater storage capacity than cartridges, enabling full-motion video, FMV, Red Book audio quality, and more complex game worlds. Sega, wary of being left behind by emerging CD-based systems, responded by developing an add-on for the Genesis. the Sega CD, known as the Mega CD in other regions. Launched in North America in 1992, the Sega CD was an impressive piece of hardware, capable of displaying FMV and handling scaling and rotation that surpassed the base Genesis. However, the Sega CD was expensive, costing nearly as much as the Genesis console itself. While it boasted some compelling games like Sonic CD and innovative titles like Lunar, the Silver Star, many releases relied heavily on FMV, which often translated into low-resolution, grainy video clips interspersed with minimal gameplay. Games like Night Trap and Surgical Strike, while initially exciting for their cinematic qualities, were often criticized for their shallow interactivity. Consumers, already having bought a Genesis, were asked to invest in an expensive add-on that delivered more sizzle than steak. The market landscape was shifting rapidly. New home computers, like the 3Do Interactive Multiplayer, were arriving with 32-bit processors and CD-ROM drives, promising a new generation of gaming. Internally, Sega of Japan had already begun development on its next-generation console, the Saturn, a powerful 32-bit machine designed to excel in 2D graphics and eventually 3D. However, Sega of America, under Kalinsk, was concerned about the long development cycle for the Saturn and the immediate threat from competitors. SOA proposed a different strategy, a quick, affordable, and high-impact 32-bit extension for the Genesis. This clash of visions, combined with an intense desire to maintain market leadership, led to the development of the 32X. Launched in late 1994, the 32X was another add-on for the Genesis, containing a 32-bit CPU and a dedicated graphics processor designed to render 3D polygons. The idea was to offer a bridge to the 32-bit era, allowing Genesis owners to experience next-generation graphics at a fraction of the cost of a full new console. The 32X, however, was a disaster from its inception. Its development was rushed, and it launched simultaneously with the Sega CD and, critically, just a few months before the Sega Saturn's surprise early launch in the US. This created an unprecedented level of market confusion. Consumers and retailers alike were baffled. Should they buy a Genesis? A Genesis with a Sega CD? A Genesis with a 32X? Or should they just wait for the upcoming Saturn, PlayStation, or Nintendo 64? Sega internally launched, supported, and then effectively killed off its own hardware within months, all while simultaneously developing its next full-fledged console. The 32X suffered from a tiny, uncompelling game library, as many developers, including Sega's own internal studios, were already focused on the Saturn. Titles like Doom and Virtua Racing Deluxe were technically impressive for the add-on, but were overshadowed by their upcoming PC and console counterparts. The 32X was effectively abandoned within less than a year of its release, leaving early adopters with expensive hardware that quickly became obsolete. This period vividly illustrates the growing internal divisions within Sega. Sega of Japan, driven by its engineering prowess and a desire for technical purity, often made decisions that alienated its Western counterparts. Sega of America, closer to the crucial North American market, understood the need for clear marketing, simplified product lines, and aggressive pricing, but its appeals were often overridden or disregarded by SOJ. The too many systems, problem, Genesis, Sega CD, 32X, diluted the brand and scattered development resources. It also squandered the immense goodwill Sega had painstakingly built during the early Genesis years. As 1995 approached, Sega found itself in a precarious position. The undisputed leader of the 16-bit era had, through a series of ambitious but poorly managed hardware initiatives, handed its competitors an open door. The stage was now set for the next battle, one where Sega, despite its technological might, would find itself fighting not just external rivals, but a growing internal battle for its own survival. The highly anticipated Saturn was coming, but it would arrive burdened by the weight of Sega's recent strategic missteps. 7. The Saturn's struggle. Japan's vision, America's dilemma. After the confusing landscape of the Sega CD and 32X, the world looked to Sega's next true hardware successor, the Saturn, with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. This was to be Sega's definitive answer to the burgeoning 32-bit era, a console designed to carry the torch passed from the Genesis. But the Saturn's journey would quickly become a cautionary tale of corporate discord, developmental complexity, and the brutal realities of a market unwilling to forgive past missteps. Development of the Saturn began in Japan with a clear focus on arcade superiority. Sega engineers, accustomed to pushing boundaries, designed a console with a complex architecture. Two Hitachi SH2 CPUs working in tandem, along with two video display processors and multiple other chips. While powerful, this dual CPU design proved notoriously difficult for developers to program for, particularly mastering the coordination required to extract maximum performance. This complexity created a significant barrier, especially for Western developers accustomed to simpler, more straightforward hardware. The Saturn launched in Japan in November 1994 to a generally positive reception, buoyed by the success of Sega's arcade sensation, Virtua Fighter. It sold well initially, indicating a strong appetite for next-generation hardware. However, the true test would come in the critical North American market, and this is where Sega made one of its most infamous blunders. At the inaugural Electronic Entertainment Expo, E3, in May 1995, Sega of America's CEO, Tom Kalinske, took the stage. After announcing the Saturn would launch in the US in September, he dropped a bombshell. The Sega Saturn was available that very day at select retailers. This surprise launch was intended to steal a march on Sony's PlayStation, which was scheduled to launch in September. Instead, it alienated nearly everyone. Large retailers like Walmart and Best Buy, who were not part of the initial launch partners and hadn't been informed, were furious. They responded by largely sidelining the Saturn, giving prime shelf space and marketing support to Sony and Nintendo. Consumers were confused, many wary after the 32X debacle, and suddenly faced with a console that was supposed to launch months later. The PlayStation, which came out just a few months later in September 1995, had several distinct advantages. Beyond a simpler, more developer-friendly architecture, Sony, a corporate giant with deep pockets for marketing and manufacturing, priced their console at $299 in the US, a full $100 less than the Saturn's launch price of $399. Sony's aggressive developer relations quickly secured an impressive stable of third-party titles, a crucial factor for console success. Internally, the friction between Sega of Japan, SOJ, and Sega of America, SOA, worsened. SOJ prioritized certain Japanese development houses and favored 2D sprite-based games, where the Saturn truly excelled. SOA, however, understood the Western market's burgeoning interest in 3D polygon graphics and third-party support. This disconnect led to a fractured software lineup. While Japan received hits like Virtua Fighter 2, Sakura Wars, and Shining Force III, many of these were never localized for the West. Conversely, SOA struggled to secure Western third-party support, as many developers found the PlayStation easier to program for. The arrival of Bernie Stolar as head of Sega of America in late 1996 signified a desperate attempt to streamline the situation. Upon his arrival, Stolar famously declared, "The Saturn is not our future," and canceled practically all ongoing Sega CD and 32X game development, focusing all resources on the Saturn and later, the next generation. While decisive, this was already too late for many. Despite some critical darlings like Nai GHTS Into Dreams, Panzer Dragoon Saga, and Sega Rally Championship, the Saturn could not overcome the PlayStation's momentum or Nintendo 64's late but impactful entry. Its complex architecture scared off developers, leading to a poorer third-party library. Its high price point, controversial launch, and fragmented focus left consumers confused and retailers displeased. By the time the PlayStation passed 1 million units sold in North America, the Saturn was lagging far behind. The Saturn's failure in the West marked a turning point for Sega. It was a clear sign that innovation for innovation's sake, coupled with corporate infighting and poor market understanding, could derail even a powerful brand. The once dominant Sega was now firmly entrenched in third place in the console race, wounded but not defeated. A final, desperate gamble was on the horizon, one that would either reclaim its former glory or cement its fate as a hardware manufacturer. 8. The Dreamcast's Last Stand. A beautiful swan song. After the painful lessons of the Sega CD, 32X, and Saturn, Sega knew their next console had to be a home run. There would be no more add-ons, no more internal debates about core strategy. This was to be a unified, singular vision, the company's last, desperate gamble to reclaim its position as a hardware leader. This ambitious effort, codenamed Katana and eventually christened the Dreamcast, was not just a console. It was Sega's final, hopeful plea to its fans and a battle cry to its rivals. Launched in Japan in November 1998 and in North America in September 1999, the Dreamcast was built upon the painful insights gleaned from the Saturn's struggle. Its hardware architecture was designed to be simpler and more developer-friendly, featuring a powerful Hitachi SH4 CPU and a custom NEC PowerVR graphics chip. This allowed for stunning visuals that rivaled and often surpassed anything seen on consoles before, closing the gap with high-end PC graphics. Perhaps the most visionary aspect of the Dreamcast was its pioneering focus on online gaming. Every Dreamcast console came equipped with a built-in dial-up modem, a revolutionary inclusion at the time. This enabled console gamers to connect to the internet, browse websites, chat with other players, and crucially, play games online. Initiatives like SegaNet promised a cohesive online experience, truly ahead of its time for the console market. Titles like Phantasy Star Online would become genre-defining hits, allowing players to adventure together across continents from their living rooms, long before Xbox Live or PlayStation Network became ubiquitous. Sega learned its marketing lessons as well. The Dreamcast's launch was accompanied by a powerful, concise advertising campaign. The iconic, "It's Thinking" tagline, combined with the spiral logo, conveyed a sense of futuristic sophistication. The console was priced competitively at $200.99 in North America, undercutting the PlayStation and establishing an attractive value proposition. The strength of the Dreamcast's launch lineup further cemented its appeal. Gamers were immediately treated to a collection of critical darlings and commercially successful titles, including the vibrant platforming of Sonic Adventure, the groundbreaking fighting mechanics of Soul Calibur, the innovative arcade action of Power Stone, and a truly epic adventure game set, initially, in Japan, Yu Suzuki's ambitious Shenmue. The console gained immediate critical acclaim and enjoyed strong sales in its initial months, selling over 500,000 units in its first 2 weeks in North America. For a glorious, fleeting period, it felt like Sega was back. However, the momentum proved short-lived. The ghost of past failures continued to haunt Sega. Developers, wary after the Saturn's woes, were hesitant to commit exclusively to the Dreamcast. Crucially, Electronic Arts, EA, a publishing giant, famously withheld support, preferring to focus on the incumbent PlayStation and the upcoming PlayStation 2. This lack of support from a major third-party developer left a significant hole in the Dreamcast's sports and Western-focused lineup. The biggest blow, however, came from Sony. In March 2000, less than 6 months after the Dreamcast's North American launch, Sony unveiled the PlayStation 2. While the Dreamcast was technically impressive, the PS2 offered a built-in DVD player, a massive selling point at the time, backwards compatibility with the original PlayStation's vast library, and the immense marketing power of the Sony brand. The PS2's raw specifications, even if difficult to program for, promised a generational leap. The writing was on the wall. The public, sensing the next wave, began to hold off on Dreamcast purchases, waiting for the PS2. The final nail in the coffin was an unexpected enemy: piracy. The Dreamcast's GD-ROM discs, a proprietary format designed to prevent copying, were quickly compromised by hackers. This allowed for widespread piracy, significantly impacting game sales and further deterring third-party developers already on the fence. Facing mounting financial losses and realizing that competing with Sony's industrial might and Nintendo's established brand was no longer sustainable in the hardware space, Sega's new chairman, Isao Okawa, made one of the most difficult and courageous decisions in gaming history. On January 31, 2001, Sega announced it would cease production of the Dreamcast and transition into a third-party software developer. It was a stunning capitulation, marking the end of an era. Hayao Nakayama, who had fiercely resisted this move, stepped down from his position. The Dreamcast, a console brimming with innovation and a beloved legacy, was a beautiful swan song that solidified Sega's reputation for pushing boundaries, even if it meant sacrificing the console war itself. The Dreamcast would forever be remembered as a console ahead of its time, a testament to Sega's enduring spirit of innovation, even in defeat. 9. Farewell to hardware. Sega's reinvention as a software powerhouse. The announcement on January 31, 2001, that Sega would cease production of the Dreamcast and pivot to become a third-party software developer sent shockwaves through the gaming world. For companies and fans alike, it was an unthinkable notion. Sega, the fierce hardware innovator, the proud challenger of Nintendo, the company that had embodied true competition for decades, would no longer make consoles. It represented the end of an era, but for Sega, it was the beginning of an entirely new chapter, one born of necessity and driven by an improbable reinvention. The pain of the decision was immense, particularly for those within Sega who had dedicated their careers to building and promoting its hardware. Hayao Nakayama, the former president who had led Sega through its most aggressive console wars and was a staunch believer in the hardware-software synergy, had already resigned, unable to reconcile himself with this fundamental shift. The burden of this decision fell primarily on Isao Akawa, who had taken over as Sega's chairman in 1999. Akawa, a shrewd businessman who had made his fortune in the software industry, recognized that continuing to hemorrhage money in a losing hardware battle would ultimately doom the entire company. In a move that epitomized his commitment to Sega's future, Akawa personally donated the staggering sum of $695 million of his own private fortune to the company shortly before his death in 2001. This act of immense personal sacrifice underscored the dire financial straits Sega was in and provided a crucial lifeline to facilitate its transformation. The transition from hardware manufacturer to multi-platform software developer was not without its challenges. Sega's internal development teams, once focused on optimizing games for Sega's proprietary hardware, now had to learn to develop for their former rivals. Sony's PlayStation 2, Nintendo's GameCube, and Microsoft's newly launched Xbox. Debugging, porting, and mastering the specific nuances of each platform required significant adjustments to internal processes and a rapid shift in mindset. Initial titles in this new multi-platform era included Dreamcast holdovers and fresh development. Some of the first widely released Sega games on rival consoles were Crazy Taxi, PS2, GameCube, PC, Jet Set Radio Future Xbox exclusive, and Phantasy Star Online, transitioning from Dreamcast to GameCube and later PC. This forced collaboration with competitors was initially awkward, but ultimately a crucial step in rebuilding relationships and demonstrating Sega's commitment to its new business model. A particularly strong partnership emerged with Microsoft. The fledgling Xbox, launched in 2001, needed strong first-party content, and Sega, with its rich history of arcade and console hits, was a perfect fit. Xbox exclusives like Jet Set Radio Future and Panzer Dragoon Orta showcase Sega's continued creativity and technical prowess, while also helping establish Microsoft's new console. This close relationship would continue for many years. Financially, the shift was difficult but necessary. Sega's revenues stabilized, no longer burdened by the massive research, development, and manufacturing costs associated with console production. The company could now focus purely on what it arguably did best: making games. The early 2000s also saw significant corporate restructuring. In 2004, Sega merged with Sammy Corporation, a major Japanese manufacturer of pachinko and pack-a-slot machines, a highly lucrative sector in Japan. This merged entity became Sega Sammy Holdings. This merger further diversified Sega's revenue streams, reducing its reliance solely on video game sales and providing a stable financial foundation. While perhaps less glamorous than console wars, The revenue from pachinko and arcade operations provided the financial fuel for Sega's continued software development efforts. Beyond console games, Sega also focused on protecting and leveraging its core franchises. Sonic the Hedgehog continued to be a mainstay, appearing on all major platforms, ensuring the brand's visibility. The company also delved deeper into the PC gaming market, acquiring and nurturing Western developers like Creative Assembly, Total War Series, and Sports Interactive, Football Manager, significantly expanding its reach and influence in a growing sector. The transition was a testament to Sega's resilience. It was a painful, often humiliating experience for a company that had once challenged giants. But by shedding the hardware burden and embracing a software-first approach, Sega ensured its survival. It was a stark reminder that in the volatile world of entertainment, adapting to changing market realities, no matter how difficult, is often the only path forward. Sega survived, charting a new, complex path forward as a multifaceted entertainment enterprise. 10. Beyond the console, Sega's modern era of diverse entertainment. With the Dreamcast era firmly behind it, and the difficult decision to exit the hardware manufacturing business made, Sega entered the 21st century not as a console king, but as a diverse entertainment conglomerate. The unified entity, Sega Sammy Holdings, became a testament to adaptability, leveraging its long history in arcades while strategically expanding into new markets. While the console wars were over for Sega, its influence and presence in gaming continued, albeit in a remarkably different form. One of the most significant pillars of Sega Sammy Holdings' revenue stream comes from areas outside traditional console gaming. The arcade division never truly faded for Sega. In fact, it remained a strong and consistent earner, particularly in Japan. While the arcade scene in the West dwindled, Japanese arcades continued to thrive. Sega's expertise in coin-operated machines, honed since the 1950s, allowed it to develop innovative and highly successful games like Initial D Arcade Stage, Border Break, and a variety of metal games, crane games, and photo booths. These are not just nostalgic relics. They are high-tech, immersive experiences that continue to draw crowds and remain incredibly profitable. Similarly, the pachinko and pack-a-slot industry, largely due to Sammy's expertise, became a massive financial engine for the merged company. These highly popular Japanese gambling machines, blending elements of pinball with slot machines, generate billions of dollars annually. While often overlooked by Western gamers, these machines are a cornerstone of Sega Sammy Holdings' financial stability, quietly funding its more recognizable ventures. In the world of video games, Sega didn't just survive, it strategically expanded its portfolio. Recognizing the growing global market for PC gaming, Sega made a series of shrewd acquisitions that fundamentally reshaped its software business. The acquisition of Creative Assembly, the British studio behind the critically acclaimed Total War Strategy series, and Sports Interactive, developers of the immensely popular Football Manager simulation games, cemented Sega's position as a major PC publisher. These franchises, along with others from acquired studios like Relic Entertainment, Company of Heroes, and Amplitude Studios' Endless Space, enjoy dedicated fan bases and consistent sales, giving Sega a strong foothold outside the console ecosystem. Sega also ventured into mobile gaming, a rapidly growing market. Leveraging its vast library of intellectual property, Sega developed and published numerous mobile titles, ranging from simplified versions of classic game modes to new mobile-first experiences featuring its iconic characters. While the mobile market is competitive, Sega continues to explore opportunities here, seeking to capitalize on brand recognition and nostalgic appeal. Crucially, Sega has worked diligently to maintain and cultivate its key console franchises. Sonic the Hedgehog remains the company's most recognizable face. After some stumble-filled years post-Dreamcast, Sonic has seen a resurgence across multiple media. New video games, animated TV series, and most notably, a highly successful series of live-action movies, have kept the blue blur relevant and popular with new generations of fans. Beyond Sonic, other iconic Sega franchises have seen revitalization. The Yakuza series, now known as Like a Dragon, developed by Ryu-ga Gotoku Studio, quietly built a cult following before exploding into global mainstream success. Its unique blend of dramatic storytelling, quirky Japanese humor, and intense combat earned it critical acclaim and a dedicated player base. Perhaps one of the most significant developments in Sega's post-hardware era was the acquisition of Atlus in 2013. This move brought the beloved Persona and Shin Megami Tensei role-playing game franchises under the Sega umbrella, further strengthening its portfolio with highly acclaimed and commercially successful titles that resonate deeply with RPG enthusiasts worldwide. Sega's modern era is one of continuous adaptation. It has embraced digital distribution, expanded its global reach, and diversified its entertainment offerings far beyond the confines of a single console. The story is no longer about winning a binary console war, but about building a resilient, multi-pronged business that can thrive in a constantly evolving entertainment landscape. From arcades to PC strategy games, mobile apps to Hollywood blockbusters, Sega has proven that a company can leave behind its hardware glory days and still innovate, engage, and remain a vital player in the global entertainment industry. 11. The legacy of innovation and risk. What Sega taught the industry. Sega's history is a turbulent, fascinating saga of exhilarating highs and heartbreaking lows. From its humble origins distributing coin-op machines to its reinvention as a diversified entertainment giant, the company has consistently been defined by two overarching characteristics: relentless innovation and audacious risk-taking. Even in its moments of struggle, Sega pushed boundaries, forcing its competitors to adapt and, in doing so, shaped the very landscape of the video game industry. In the arcades, Sega was unsurpassed in its drive for cutting-edge technology. The superscalar graphics of Space Harrier and Outrun, the groundbreaking 3D visuals of Virtua Fighter and Daytona USA, and the development of motion simulation cabinets that literally immersed players in the game, like Hang On and Afterburner, set benchmarks for visual fidelity and interactive experiences. Yu Suzuki, the visionary behind many of these titles, wasn't just making games. He was crafting technological showcases that influenced not only other arcade developers, but also served as powerful blueprints for future home console technology. In the home console market, Sega's impact was profound. While the Master System struggled, its very existence provided competition that spurred Nintendo to innovate. But it was the Genesis Mega Drive that truly revolutionized the industry. Sega's aggressive marketing and brand positioning, the Attitude Era, the direct comparison with Nintendo, embodying a counterculture cool, forced its rival to rethink its own strategies. The console wars, ignited by Sega, fostered an environment of fierce competition that accelerated technological progress and drove down prices, benefiting consumers immensely. The creation of Sonic the Hedgehog wasn't just about a mascot, it was about defining a brand persona that resonated deeply with a generation. Sega's most visionary move, despite its tragic outcome, was the Dreamcast's pioneering approach to online gaming. Long before Xbox Live or PlayStation Network became mainstream, the Dreamcast offered built-in internet connectivity and a dedicated online service in SegaNet. Games like Phantasy Star Online proved the viability and appeal of online multiplayer on consoles, laying crucial groundwork for the connected gaming experiences that dominate today. The Dreamcast was simply ahead of its time, a testament to Sega's foresight in anticipating future trends. But Sega's story is also a brutal lesson in the double-edged nature of risk. Its willingness to try new hardware concepts, even risky ones like the Sega CD and 32X, demonstrated a commendable spirit of innovation. However, the haphazard execution, rapid obsolescence, and the resulting confusion for consumers tragically fragmented the brand. The Saturn's complex architecture and the catastrophic surprise launch epitomized how even advanced technology can be rendered ineffective without cohesive strategy, clear communication, and strong developer relations. Sega's experience profoundly underscored the critical need for third-party support and user-friendly development environments in console gaming. The internal struggles between Sega of Japan and Sega of America taught valuable lessons about the perils of corporate infighting and a lack of unified vision. Decisions made in one region without full consideration of the other's market needs or strategic concerns proved detrimental, particularly during the transition from the Genesis to the Saturn era. Ultimately, Sega's most profound lesson might be its courageous pivot. The decision to exit the hardware market, a move many saw as an admission of defeat, was in fact an act of unparalleled resilience. It demonstrated that a company could shed its historical identity, make painful choices, CEO Isao Akawa's personal sacrifice symbolizing this commitment, and reinvent itself to survive and thrive. By foregoing the hardware battle, Sega freed itself to focus on its core strength, making compelling games. Sega's story is not merely a corporate history, it's a living, breathing saga that continues to captivate. It speaks to the allure of innovation, the thrill of competition, and the harsh realities of a fast-paced industry that rewards both daring and pragmatism. Even without its own console, Sega's DNA, the spirit of pushing boundaries, of daring to be different, continues to resonate, influencing game design, marketing, and the very structure of the entertainment industry. Its legacy isn't just about hardware or software. It's about the enduring impact of a company that always, seemingly, dared to chase the next level. 12. Sega Forever. A timeless impact on gaming culture. The story of Sega is a testament to the dynamic and often brutal cycles of innovation, competition, and adaptation that define the entertainment industry. While the company no longer manufactures gaming consoles, its name resonates with a powerful, almost nostalgic, force across generations of gamers. Sega's impact on gaming culture is not merely a chapter in history. It's an enduring legacy that continues to influence, entertain, and inspire. Sega Forever. For many, the name Sega immediately conjures images of the 16-bit era. The Genesis Mega Drive, with its aggressive marketing and iconic blue mascot, holds a cherished place in the hearts of those who lived through the console wars. This enduring nostalgia fuels a vibrant retro gaming scene, where fans eagerly collect old hardware, play classic titles through emulation, or seek out modern compilations and re-releases. Initiatives like Sega Ages and Sega Forever specifically cater to this demand, bringing beloved classics to new platforms and ensuring their preservation for future generations. Beyond commercial ventures, a thriving community and fandom continue to celebrate Sega's history. Dedicated websites, forums, and content creators actively discuss, analyze, and even develop new content for Sega's old systems. The Dreamcast, in particular, has fostered a remarkable community that continues to release new games on the console, even decades after its discontinuation. This grassroots passion highlights the emotional connection players formed with Sega's vision and its unique approach to gaming. Sega's influence extends beyond dedicated gaming circles and into popular culture. References to Sonic the Hedgehog, Jet Set Radio, Shenmue, and the intense rivalry with Nintendo frequently appear in movies, TV shows, and even music, often serving as cultural touchstones for a specific era. The sheer audacity of Sega's marketing during its heyday, Sega does what Nintendo don't. Welcome to the next level, wasn't just advertising. It was a cultural phenomenon that shaped how an entire generation viewed gaming. The question of what if inevitably lingers in any discussion of Sega. What if the Saturn had a simpler architecture? What if the Dreamcast had full third-party support or wasn't plagued by piracy? These hypothetical scenarios serve as a testament to the sheer potential and vision that Sega often possessed, even when its execution fell short. The heroic failure of the Dreamcast remains a bittersweet symbol of a company that dared to dream too big, too fast, for its own good. Today, Sega Sammy Holdings is a sprawling, diversified entertainment powerhouse. While video games remain a significant portion of its business, profitable ventures in arcades, pachinko, and other media provide a robust financial foundation. The company's strategic acquisitions of studios like Creative Assembly and Atlas have brought new life and global recognition to iconic franchises like Total War, Yakuza Like a Dragon, and Persona. Sonic the Hedgehog continues to be a flagship IP, evolving into a successful multimedia franchise across games, films, and television, ensuring Sega's visibility in the contemporary entertainment landscape. Sega's journey from a small American importer to a global entertainment giant. Through the triumphs and failures of the console wars and its eventual reinvention, is more than just a business case study. It is a fundamental chapter in the history of interactive entertainment, demonstrating the relentless pursuit of innovation, the high stakes of competition, and the profound impact a single company can have on popular culture. Sega's bold spirit, willingness to take risks, and commitment to creating unique and memorable experiences will forever resonate. Though its hardware days are behind it, the legacy of Sega, its games, its characters, its audacious attitude, lives on, a vibrant and essential part of the enduring story of play. Sega Forever,